If you go in here with nothing in mind, everything is going to look like a jungle at that point.
Yeah.
It will drain you because people tend to lose a sense of themselves. There's really something more beyond that. Fashion is really beyond what you wear and what you see on social media.
Welcome back to Soul, a roundtable on creativity, expression, artistry, and vision. Today, we're with Caryll Cabuhat, a fashion writer with a next generation perspective on where the industry is headed. We talk about her courage to pursue a creative career despite different expectations from her family, as well as her creative process and purpose behind her soulful writing. Caryll! How was your event? You came from an event.
Yes, actually, I'm on leave today, but
Okay.
I treated it as like a day off in the end because most of the time when I go to events, it's for work. So now I was able to like relax and just really be with the people I'm usually with.
You enjoyed naman?
I did because one, I've been meaning to really understand people more rather than the event.
Yeah.
So I was able to do that there.
What's been like your favorite event so far since getting into the industry?
Nespresso. I had one with Nespresso, I think last year. And it was like a staycation in Shangri-La. So it was really more about relaxing.
Wow, sarap.
Yeah, I know. But then we did yoga in the morning. I don't know if I enjoyed that.
Supposedly, that's like a relaxing thing to
It's
do.
supposedly, yes. But I was still working that time. Yeah.
But they gave you a free stay in
They
Shangri-La.
did.
Oh,
They're
that's
very
nice,
much
that's
gracious for that.
Sarap. What first drew you? So you're a fashion writer, right?
Yes.
How did you get started with fashion writing? Was it the writing? Was it the fashion? Was it both at the same time?
Okay. To just be honest, like in this part, I never liked writing, but I've always been into fashion. Like even when I was like probably 11 or 12, I liked the idea of being in the arts already, but I never knew where. That was until I started to do my own research. I was seeing more clips on runways, and then of course I watched The Devil Wears Prada. So those are the little things that piqued my interest in fashion. But regarding fashion writing, I actually just got into it during the pandemic. I was privileged enough to be in internships that kind of had the same gist when you're in publication. So I was into copywriting, content creation, and all that. And luckily, before I graduated, I landed the job in the company I'm in right now.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Okay. So on the podcast we want to explore creativity and expression, right? And when people think creativity, they think music and visual arts and dancing.
Fine arts.
Oh, fine arts. Okay. So what is fashion?
Just
Like what is it?
I think fashion is a form of art that is very much individualistic and a form of expression. Same thing. If in visual arts, you can express through paint or any type of medium, fashion is the same thing. You get to choose your clothes, you get to choose a certain genre, mix up a little bit with your personality, and then it's you.
Yeah.
So you're expressing yourself, but wearable. That's technically it.
Okay, so I grew up kind of like a minimalist in terms of fashion. Like I would just wear jeans and a black shirt.
Yeah.
That would be my standard go-to. Is that fashion or is that like just utilitarian?
I think fashion can be anything you want it to be.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be strict. Art isn't supposed to be strict. It's not supposed to be caged in one box. So for me to say that fashion is supposed to be in this certain creative landscape, then I'm not doing justice to it.
Yeah. That's cool. So okay, what if I'm like a nobody in the industry, and you know it's important to have not just a portfolio but a portfolio attached to certain brand names and companies. Like if you're fashion writing, you can't just have a personal blog. Like sometimes I've written an article with this and this, you know. How do I even get started building a repertoire like that?
I am a nobody. I am that nobody. Because in my family, actually, not just like my intimate family, but my relatives as well, they're either entrepreneurs or they're in the military, they're not, nurses or anything that's just conventional. So it's me and my brother who stepped into the arts.
Nice.
And of course, there's so much pressure in that because one, you're not only thinking about the backlash from your family. Two, how are you going to make it into a creative that's already so tight? Because everyone knows everyone. And they kind of grew up with each other now. So it's hard to figure out just to get in a little bit. But one thing I did was back in college, I didn't join any orgs.
Oh, me too.
I didn't. Like you like anyone can do what they want, but for me, you can put that time into looking for different opportunities with actual entrepreneurs or practitioners in the industry. So that's what I did. And I think I was still 17 and I was already doing events with Bench and all that. Thankfully, the school had that kind of connection. But for those who doesn't have, one thing for me is that you need to be humble enough to constantly submit your portfolio to anyone. Parang, there's so much rejections that I faced before I even got the job. And I'm just happy that I was able to kind of will myself to continue on, regardless of them not replying and all. But for nobody to get in, it's very much possible. And I'm saying that as, you know, as someone who also didn't come from a background in fashion. So yeah.
How did you get your first gig?
My first solo gig talaga was with a local beauty brand called Strokes Beauty Lab. And I came in with as in nothing. That was during the pandemic and I had no portfolio regarding content creation. I had nothing for copywriting. All I could really send them was my previous works, like with like my illustrations and all. Ay, pakapala na mukha. Like what you have, sige, try to give it because that's the only thing you have naman eh. I think that happened through LinkedIn now, and I became their first intern in Strokes.
Nice.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So, I know, but after when I left, I remember making this deck. It's like how to be a Strokes intern. So they like the fact that you take initiatives before they even thought about it.
Galing.
Yun, unahan mo na sila.
So you face a lot of rejection pala, like going. No, not at all.
I'm fine.
Okay. That's very brave of you. What's one thing that someone should know or have in mind before joining the fashion industry?
I think not just in fashion, but any art industry in general. If you don't have purpose, or if you don't know why you're there in the first place, then you're gonna get lost. You're gonna get burnt out. And at one point, you'll just be there floating around. And I think that's one of the worst feelings to be in as a creative. Because yun nga, parang if you're creative, then you always have this passion to do something. And that translates to your work. So if you don't have that in the first place, it affects the things that you do, not just the creative stuff that you do, but also your personality. Parang you get into this mental state that's just hard to get out of. So if you don't have purpose, or if you're still trying to look for that purpose, it's gonna come in. Mine came in during the pandemic. I wanted to be in fashion because one, I think it's an industry here in the Philippines that needs more work, and I think the younger generation has that kind of tenacity in them. So yeah.
That's cool. Let's dive into that. How do you feel like, so firstly, like top level, how do you feel like the fashion industry needs more work? And then how the generation's tenacity plays into that. And so since you opened up a little bit about the generation, parang, how have you seen the fashion industry evolve? At least based on what you know over the previous generations and how this generation is pushing the envelope.
So like I'm one of them. I'm one of like the younger generations, obviously. So one thing I notice is that when we look for stories or designs that sparks, or like not even sparks an interest, but it creates this conversation, an open conversation whether it's a good conversation or a bad conversation, but there's an impact to it. Parang you're left with thoughts and ideologies that you didn't even know were there in the first place. So I think right now the younger generation is more adventurous. They don't like to stay within a safe, safe space, although it's good to have a safe space.
Yeah.
But for them to constantly push the boundaries, constantly challenge the norms and the stereotypes, that itself will open so much in the fashion industry, especially here in the Philippines, because right now it's kind of like a baby still compared to the giants. Parang you have the States, you have Milan, France, and all that.
Yeah.
The Philippines is slowly garnering that kind of identity pa. Of course, it's gonna take some time. But because nga parang people are more aggressive now, it's gonna happen.
When it comes to like, I guess how you... So definitely you're one of those people.
I'm definitely one of those people,
yeah. And we see it. Like the fact that even in your own personal life, you had to take a leap of faith.
Yeah.
To like in a family where I guess the jobs they were taking on. All right, where the jobs, we'll just not cut that and we won't explain it.
Leave them wondering.
So where the it was a risk for you, I guess.
Definitely.
How does that affect your creative process when it comes to writing about fashion?
It's funny because my creative process depends on my mood. When you say, let's think of it as like a physical type. So when I write, and there are times when I just can't write talaga, I would look for means to help stimulate my brain. So I would play music, but it's supposed to be music that I can't understand. It's not supposed to be English or Tagalog.
Okay.
Because if it is, then I get distracted. I have short attention span. As many people in my generation are. So that happened for a while until it didn't work anymore. And then I would be on my phone, walking around the house, typing my story, even if my laptop's just right beside me. But because I need to move. And then very recently, it's a little odd at first, but like in music, it's something that I should understand. So I've been listening to K-pop idols lives because they're Korean, so I can't understand. But because it's noise, it's noise. I need it to kind of generate that energy in my brain. So it really depends on my mood or like what time of the day it is and all. But I'm just happy that I get to like produce something, and it's something. It's interesting when you learn other people's creative processes then, as creatives. It gets weirder and weirder.
Right. So I thought at first you said you listen to K-pop idols. Lives. I thought like they're live performances of songs. And then now I'm like, oh, you mean like they're live
actual,
streams and they're just talking and you don't understand what they're saying. But then...
but it's interesting. Like, it's such a weird place to be in for my brain.
Right.
But it keeps me going naman, so might as well. What
do you do when you face creative block or like writer's block? Like you can't, even if you're already listening to the K-pop live.
The thing is that happens every day. I'm not even exaggerating. But there are certain times of the day wherein I'd be at home and then I'm talking to no one. Then I just go, my brain's not working, nothing's happening, so I'm panicking and all that. So for me, I'd like to say it's very much normal, and it's not just me. It's something that other writers also express, that the block happens too often. So as much as I can say, I want to say that, I do something, or like I do something to prevent it. I can't.
Just face the music.
I have to kind of accept the fact that I have writer's block until it reaches the very last hour of the day, and then that's when I get to produce something, because I procrastinate.
That's so interesting, no? Parang sometimes cramming what
helps.
Stimulates the imagination.
Because there's fear.
There's fear. All right.
There's fear and pressure.
The motivation of fear and pressure can be healthy sometimes, I guess. I don't know if I should be.
Depends with your interpretation.
Yeah, no, I had a deadline also very recently. We had
Yeah.
like an internal competition in our company, and then while the other teams were presenting, we realized we didn't have a deck, but they had decks na, but we didn't know na kailangan ng deck.
It wasn't.
It wasn't required.
Okay.
But then they went the extra mile. Eh, kami, or yung team namin, parang, sige, okay lang, we'll just present like the words, you know.
Yeah.
And so we made the deck while they were presenting. And then since it was a competition, it's so funny. We won that because, I don't know, Motolite clutch of the game, you know what I mean?
Maybe. And it like brought out the most creative things in your mind at that point.
So I guess when it comes to like keeping yourself on your toes, how do you keep yourself on your toes in an industry that embodies individuality and diversity?
It's so funny that, how would I say this? I would look for two groups of people, so that my mind is in a balanced state all the time. So because there's so much diversity in it, I like to place myself in one community that has the same mind or wavelength as me, who shares the same beliefs, who has the same purpose. They really love what they're doing. And then you have the other group of people who thinks the exact opposite of you.
Love it.
Because you have to be comfortable enough to face those kinds of, not even personalities, but to have these beliefs thrown at your face in a daily manner. You need to be open to those. And I think as a Christian, you can't put yourself in a certain group of people that you feel safe with. Christ went out of his way to be with other people. Why do you have to do the opposite? It doesn't make sense. And I think that's also a way of you loving your job even more.
Wow.
Because you're not in a stagnant position all the time, but you're constantly facing these challenges. You're constantly facing these people who, like right in front of you, would oppose you. But that's okay. That's how life is.
Yeah.
And that's how you get to grow in your career and also as a person.
Wow. So stepping out of your bubble. No?
Definitely. I think if you grew up in a church community for so long, it's hard to do that. It's hard to kind of like put yourself out there even more. But because you have faith with the fact that God's really got you, regardless of the situation.
Yeah.
And it's not like their beliefs will hinder you. It'll actually make you more knowledgeable. And then you can have your own interpretation of your faith because of that.
Yeah, I feel like the smartest and even the most creative people are the most open-minded ones. They're the ones who aren't afraid to face reality and to face that, maybe my preconceived notions, maybe my traditions in my mindset, they deserve to be questioned there.
Yes.
And when that questioning happens and we face that reality and then we ask real curious questions and we discover that the answers are different from what we thought, that's when creative ideas come.
Yeah.
I see that a lot in you, especially as a fashion fashion person.
Maybe someone in fashion.
as a person in fashion, as a fashion person.
We can make that a thing.
So what is a recent or something that comes to mind that is one of the more daring things that you've done?
It's actually related with work. When I was really pushing for stories that are probably going to open a lot of conversations. I think one of them was regarding the whole de-influencing trend that we've seen on TikTok more than a couple of times. And at first, of course, there's like internal I was still contemplating, should I still do this? Because one, we use influencers a lot in this industry, and then you're also in a community wherein people like to have that kind of community. But because I wanted people to kind of think for a moment, why is this happening? Why is de-influencing happening? When if you look at it, they're just influencing you even more.
Okay, yeah.
Diba?
What is the influencing para everyone can...
So basically, de-influencing is when someone talks about a certain product or a certain trend and they would say bad reviews regarding it, and they're mostly products that have hit the sales already, or like they're already part of the must-haves back then, and then suddenly people are talking bad about it, so that they're trying to de-influence you, and then they're trying to give you alternatives. But it's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. You just change the term.
Right.
So yun. But for me, I wanted people to understand why it's happening in the first place. And it's because people are tired of hearing everything that is good.
Yeah.
They just want honest opinions at this point.
We can call out BS,
Yes.
especially in this new, I guess, the new generation, the new like decentralized content production and publication era. And so we can spot like new, I mean, generation natin.
Our generation.
Yeah, but even more as the, parang there was this stat like you see not 500 more nga, basta a crazy number of advertisements a day, and you really only remember like 10% or less of them, but then like that's how many ads are shoved our way now. How do you balance like your personal style with the taste and the needs and the expectations of the audience?
One thing for sure is that fashion has such a luxurious or like glamorous feel to it, of course, because we see these runways and then we see these celebrities wearing whatever they want. So growing up, I felt very much like an outsider from the fashion world, even if I was interested in it. So because of that, when I write stories, I make it a point to try to make it relatable to my readers. So for example, I'm just gonna go direct with my article. It was for Louis Vuitton's menswear collection. It was very much out there. There's a lot of prints and all that. And at first I didn't want to read about it because it didn't look good to my eyes. And then when I read the brief, hence why it's really important to like read them, I found out the story. And it's actually how a man, or like, how a boy grew up from being an infant to a toddler, adolescent, and then him as an adult. So when I wrote the story, I tried to kind of incorporate that kind of movement. So for example, the collection started very bland. Like there's no personality, it's grays and all that. Because that's like that. When you're an infant, you have no personality.
Yeah.
And then it slowly moves towards a more not really messy, but you can tell that they're trying to figure out who they are. So that's them when they were teenagers, and then they have a more refined look when they were adults, and then you see that in the collection.
Galing.
So in a way, I want the stories to be told in a watered down sense, so that people can understand
in a relatable, approachable way.
Yeah, because fashion is, although fashion feels too far, you can make it personal. That is if you can trying to navigate your way through it. Yeah.
How do you, so obviously the human psychology is so attracted to storytelling, narratives, that's how principles are passed down because of so how do you integrate that into your writing?
When I write stories, I don't want it to feel like it's just a feature. I don't want you to read it and then at one point you're just gonna close it with nothing in mind. I want my stories to have soul in it. So if I can put a little bit of opinion, or if there's just like something that will tell them or advise them to look beyond the words and look with the eyes of an artist instead of an audience.
Wow.
Because that's how art works.
Yeah.
Parang it's open to interpretation. It's very much subjective. But the fact that you'll be able to see it with the eyes of an artist, then that's when you'll grasp the industry even more.
What constitutes soul? How do you know that a piece has soul in it?
when you could tell that the person really loves what they're writing about. You'll see that with how they format or they lay out their stories. It's funny because people think a lengthy story is the most passionate ones, but sometimes it can work with short stories as well.
That's true.
It really depends with how a person writes and how they try to tell a story with their own, spice in it.
Yeah. So as we close now, if we have aspiring, you can divide it into two. So aspiring fashion people, or aspiring writers out there. What would you let them know? Na parang, like, I know that you're still growing and you have a lot ahead of you, but at the same time you've reached a certain point as well. Like, what would you tell the people who are looking up to you at right now?
Always go back to your purpose. That's what I keep telling everyone, especially when I do Instagram questions. Parang people would ask me, how did you get there? Or like, how did you do it and all that? And I make it a point to always remind them, go back to your purpose. Because if you go in here with nothing in mind, everything is going to look like a jungle at that point.
Yeah.
You don't know where to place yourself with, or you don't know where to go. Because it's such the industry, not just in the Philippines, but outside as well, it will drain you. Because people tend to lose a sense of themselves and they get lost within the luxury. And that's something you shouldn't do, because there's really something more beyond that, something that a lot of writers nowadays have. Like, it's like a responsibility for them to tell people fashion is really beyond what you wear and what you see on social media. We want it to be a community wherein like any artistic community, actually, we want it to be a space wherein you feel like you are yourself and you don't have to pretend to be anyone. And it's especially in the fashion industry, you kind of have to pretend to be someone else, but that's why we're trying to lose sight of that. We don't want that anymore.
I love it. You're making me feel proud to be myself. This is an inspiring conversation. Thank you so much. Where can people find you on social media?
I literally just have one active social media account. That's my Instagram. It's Caryll_Andrea. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for...
Yeah, but I don't really do anything on TikTok. Let's not go there.
Wait, no, real talk. Are you intentionally not promoting your TikTok? Para we don't have to put it on.
Oh no, TikTok is kind of just like a dump for me. So
but you don't mind if people follow.
I don't mind.
Okay, then follow it, guys.
But Instagram is more like, professional purpose.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway.
Yeah, let's do that.
What did I ever do? Looks through like the oldest video.
Yeah, I know, right? Thanks, Caryll.
I will remove that.
before this gets published.
Yeah, I was like, I should probably remove that video.
Yeah, I'll download it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.